Hello, guys. Great to be here, even though this might not be a part of it. But it's good to see everybody here, and thanks for everybody making the drive and seeing some familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces. And good to meet Mr. Harvey for sure, and everyone else. So, pretty excited to be a part of this group today. And there's a lot of cool things to talk about and to discuss that's going on in the automotive space. And great to be among the top professionals represented here today to share with us their thoughts and expertise and guidance as we get into 2021. So I want to throw out some of the questions, and we'll start with Mr. Kot. So as we turn our attention to 2021, what is one thing that dealers should be doing that they may have learned from 2020 that you definitely want to implement in 2021, or they should have learned anyways?
Yeah, I mean, well, there was quite a few things, right? I mean, obviously, you can walk through a few pillars. I mean, expense control was a big one right off the bat, right? You had to kind of do, we kind of broke it into three pillars where, must have, would like to have, don't need. And then, you had to shave the fat really quickly. So that was one pillar. And then the second one went right into customer engagement and employee engagement. So, I mean, we're communicating all different ways and way more often with our staff and making sure that, we're aware of what they're doing and what's going on. And obviously, everybody's on edge and everybody's stressed out. So when you have your employees and your customers a little bit on edge, you have to make sure that you're doing the right things to combat that and just have lots more resources. Whether it's with your benefits, we added to the benefits to make sure our employees had, that they had professional counselors and stuff like that for the mental health stuff, and then you have to increase HR, right? Because as an owner, there's not a day that goes by now where there's not an HR issue, right? Where you have to be involved and talk to your team and find out what's best for that employee or that dealership, right? So I would just say, I don't think it's going to come out for a few months yet. So I think you got to keep doing the things you're doing right now. And I think, most of the strongest dealers, they reacted really quick. Yeah. On all those type of things, and we're able to, a lot of them, were able to have really good years because of it, right? So, when I'm talking to a lot of my peers, they're telling me that they've had some of the best years because of those measures that they had to do, right? So, we're going to do a lot of the same type of things that we did in 2021, and we're pretty optimistic about 2022.
So it sounds, from what I'm gathering from you made you focused a lot on people, yeah, and enhancing looking after your team,
right? And
having an open mind and listening to a lot of the feedback, because this mental health thing is an issue, actually. And I did a podcast, my 80th episode just last week on mental health in the automotive space, coincidentally. So to hear you speak about that is actually eye-opening.
I mean, Everold, fear is a big thing, right? So when fear set in, as a leader in my company, I had to make sure that I was saying and doing the right things with my team and working out of it. And then same thing, the way we communicate with our customers was really important as well. So we got out of the gate really quick and made sure that we were, doing the right things when it comes to, and there's still a little bit of fear in the market, but people are kind of coming out of it now and in their decision making and going that route. So.
Well, that's good. Congrats. So what do you think, Jason, dealerships should change in their operations going forward in 2021?
Well, I think one of the biggest changes as an industry that we had to make was the way that we communicate with our customers. If you take a look at any dealer website out there, we ask two forms of communication: a phone number or an email address. And so as an industry, we had to quickly adapt our communication efforts to a level that the customer was comfortable for. So I think one of the biggest lessons that we learned, this previous year and going in now in this year is how do we maintain that? asking the question like, do people want to chat on Facebook Messenger? Is that where they feel comfortable? Do they feel comfortable chatting on LinkedIn? Everybody knows that if you're trying to get a hold of me, you don't call me or text message me. I mean, you guys all do it all the time too. It's like if you're going to get an answer from me, it's going to be quick. It's going to be on LinkedIn. It's going to be on LinkedIn Messenger. So I think that's probably for me when I saw one of the biggest things one of the biggest lessons that dealers have learned, and I hope they continue with this, is communicating to the customer way the customer wants to communicate, not the way us as a dealer want to communicate.
That's important. So right off the bat in the first two questions, we're talking a lot about communication as a big trend and a big place that we need to make a lot of improvements going forward for dealerships to operate optimally, because I think communication has always been such a big deal, but now more and more, some dealers have really stepped up the game, and that has paid dividends with their team and their customers. So, from a guy who managed a huge inventory in Kia Canada, we'll ask you the inventory question.
Sell everything to the dealer.
Sell everything. That's cool. So Ted, for many dealers, inventory levels will continue to be a big concern, and in some cases, affecting revenue through 2020 and on through 2021 in a very big way. So, what are some of the revenue streams dealers could focus on going forward for 2021?
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in 2021. Taking my OEM hat off, and my OEM friends are not going to like this answer. I am going to say to dealers out there that they're going to have to be very cognizant of what the OEM does, because as you know, production shut down during the pandemic. It's starting to ramp back up. Ramping back up means that they are building to try and catch up a little bit. And I think dealers are going to have to be very conscious of what the OEM is going to be doing with regard to inventory management in 2021. I think dealers will find that there's going to be a lot pushed to them as the OEM ramps up with their production. So managing that and keeping the right amount of inventory is going to be very important. But I think ways in which they can look at other revenue opportunities, it's not necessarily other streams, because I think dealers, in a lot of the dealer agreements limit what they can do. They can only sell a certain brand other than used. They can sell multiple brands. They can offer other services to clients. They're going to have to make sure that service is, they communicate a lot more. We've talked about communication quite a bit, but communicating and managing your database is going to be the biggest thing that I see as an opportunity in 2021. I think the pandemic really did show us that having the communication with your existing client base will help people manage through a situation like we went through. And dealers, the best dealers, will continue to do that. They will exploit their database in a positive way to bring in opportunities to the service side of the business. And that's where they're going to be able to capture new opportunities in 2021 if inventory is off. So making sure that service is robust. And then, we know there's a shortage in pre-owned vehicles, and they're very costly right now. And I don't think that's going to change in the near future. I think that's 6 months into the year before we'll see it flatten a little bit. So again, managing that database is a great way to get consumers into new vehicles. And you can pre-sell, the values, really good managers, and there's a lot that are out there that can future predict what that value is going to be, and they can pre-sell the incoming new car and make sure that inventory is turning as quickly as possible. And I think that's a way a lot of dealers can generate additional revenue as well, is balancing the inventory. Most OEMs give some form of credit, holdback or flooring credit. And if you can turn the inventory quick enough, those credits become revenue, and that's a great way to manage profit for 2021.
Don't you think there's also like a little bit of a training element though too here? Like I'm finding certain dealerships are so used to selling a specific vehicle, right? Like let's look at domestic manufacturer, right? 60 to 70% of their sales could be trucks. Now all of a sudden they don't have them.
Yep.
And trying to rebuild their identity. I mean, now you're talking to salespeople who are used to, 1 out of, or 3 out of every 4 customers they sold a truck to. Now they got to figure out how to quickly sell SUVs. That's one thing I thought, everyone's like right now, it's like, I'd be putting a significant amount of money in training and retraining the staff on just how to sell, how to sell different models. I mean, there are people now looking for less expensive models. I mean, it's a more of a conversation around the vehicle, I think, more than it ever has been before.
It is, and I would say if you step back a few years, that would be an easier challenge than what they have now. Now manufacturers are using single platforms for multiple different vehicles, and having access to that platform creates its challenge. I mean, if you're building a truck on a specific platform, there's probably 2 SUVs in the lineup that are also on that same platform. So having access to even the SUVs is becoming a challenge. And we've seen it, right? I mean, the industry has been continuously changing. Small SUVs, mid-size SUV, the sport utility vehicle, I mean, it's become the main sales vehicle of most dealerships, right? Yeah. Cars have, somewhat gone by the wayside, and that's why we're seeing people ramp down their production or offerings in that space. So it's really not about necessarily transitioning from truck to SUV, it's transitioning back to car in some regard.
Yeah, it's like reteaching the salesperson how to sell smaller cars. I mean, Dan, you got to be seeing some of this with the trade information.
I was going to say,
getting,
if
right?
you don't mind me piling on a little bit, I think that, to move from one brand of car to selling the car is probably not enough of a move. Yeah, and I think we need to get away from moving, from selling the car entirely. We got to sell the problem associated with the life event that customer came in with, because they came in with a life event. And the loyalty is dying nowadays. We're talking about inventory shortages, and you're going to get the inventory that you got kind of thing. So as a sales rep, you need to be able to take that life problem, and whether it's this truck, whether it's this car, whether it's this brand, whether it's new, whether it's used, you got to be able to explain how that vehicle and the brand will solve the problem in their life event.
That's so true. I mean, because look, I mean, nobody builds a bad car anymore, right? I mean, you remember the Hyundai Pony.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, we were just talking about that brand new Elantra. Holy crap. Like 30 inches of touch screen, voice activation. That's not a pony. Nobody out there makes a bad car anymore. I think to Dan's point, it's, I think, solving that life event in the vehicle, how it just kind of matches to that. I think as an industry, we've been, I don't know, maybe things have been made easier for us because it's easy just to sell the inventory itself or the car itself. Now things are getting tighter. We're having to sell that life event, like Dan was saying. I think that's actually really cool.
Well, I like the terminology life event because for years now, I've been preaching about solving customers' problems before they even think they have a problem. That's right. And I even had this conversation earlier with Paul, and not seeing the clients more than once. Managing lease accounts or finance accounts, this was no different to me that we had to go to an appointment-based system because that's how I worked anyways. And I've always analyzed it that we're not in this business to sell anymore. It's never actually has been about selling, maybe 20 years ago. But it's not about selling. It's about solving people's problems. And one of the greatest compliments that I think dealers and sales reps and managers can get is when you are able to anticipate the customer's problem by listening and giving them valuable feedback and helping them choose something that solves that problem, even before the problem occurs in their life. So that's very, very good. And I wanted to go back and pick on John a bit with the next question because he started off so eloquently. So as we were approaching the 1 year mark of the pandemic, how and you touched on stress levels. How do dealers navigate and help employees with their stress levels?
Well, what we decided to as a company, and it was a best practice, and I know lots of dealers do it, but we rolled out cultural surveys, right? So we reached out to every staff member, and in the past you might just email them, right? And then they fill out something, but we actually put a process in place where an HR, independent person, which is kind of, she's the middle person or he the middle person. I see there's an HR person here, but we found that it was necessary for that HR coordinator or manager or whoever to sit down with the employee and kind of be the stepping stone towards the in-between between management, and they were able to share, what they were going through and this type of stuff. And then we would analyze that data. We'd meet with the managers and go over it. And then in some cases, we knew that we had to educate our managers and they had to take courses. And in some cases we screwed up, right? And was like, hey, you know what? We're not handling these things proper, and we better fix it. And an easy example would be like social clubs, right? You're charging staff members $20. Well, then when you have COVID and you can't do any social events, so what can you do? These are just little things, but sometimes you don't always think about it. Well, we're going to have them down the road, but instead, so now, hey, we're going to department at that, and once a month your department's going to have lunch brought in, and we're going to still try and do them, but at a smaller thing. And so that's just one example, but there was lots of little things that came open with the culture survey. So we know that we have to do those more often. We know that we have to try and listen to the employees on what their stresses are at work, and then help them try and as a company resolve them, because if the employees feel better at the workplace, then they're going to give better customers experience, right? So
The little things, that's what makes a big difference.
It really is. And I complimented John before we started today about an initiative that he did, giving turkeys to his staff member for the holiday season. And it really has become, stress is all around us. There's people that are coping with the pandemic in ways, various different ways, and it's difficult. Going to work is difficult. Being with consumers, understanding where they might have been, and the risk that you're taking going to work every day. A lot of the dealers that I've spoken to, it's making it fun. Work can be fun, and understanding that everybody's in the same boat and we're all facing these challenges. In a lot of dealerships, they're finding that as a catalyst to bring them together. And I think if you bring your team together, and John's initiative is, and a lot of dealers' initiative of putting out the surveys and finding what we can do and how we can do it better, is great, because the voice of your staff is vital.
And what happened on it is, in some cases, a general manager didn't really know how his employee was perceiving him, it's obviously not easy being a GM right now or a manager of people in this environment in any company or any type of industry. But when they seen it in writing that, hey, 2 or 3 of the same employees kind of, and I approached it with them and said, hey, don't feel bad about this. This is how we're going to learn, right? This is how we're going to get better. So, there's no perfect managers. There's no perfect, no one's perfect. So let's take this feedback and try and be better, right? And I think the employees really liked it, that, they seen some changes immediately because of the survey.
Yeah, and I like that whole, top approach when owners, dealers focus on their staff or focus on their teams, because what ultimately you want is that your team become ambassadors. And if you have 50 ambassadors running around your dealership, that's going to show a lot to your customers. And one of the worst things I've seen in dealerships is when customers walk in and you can tell that one department is disagreeing with the other, and
the air is thick.
The air is thick, and there's inconsistency in information, in attitude, in philosophy. And so it's a very big deal today to have that, a consistent platform, a consistent philosophy in dealerships.
Well, I think with stress right now, and I've been actually talking a lot more about this than I ever thought I would ever normally talk about this. But I think about when I first started working at a dealership. Guys, we're in an industry that has a culture of check it at the curb. Okay, it is, right? How many times did your manager, you walk in and you just broke up with your girlfriend or something like that, and it's like, no, this is Saturday, this is game day. Whatever the hell you have, you need to check it at the curb. And I still think for a lot of dealerships, that's kind of the case, I remember getting frazzled with a deal going into my manager's office, and he's like, suck it up, buttercup, and I'm sure I heard variations of that. And I actually think one of the big things right now is to kind of get ahead of the staff member being stressful. It's just allowing our team and our staff to actually have feelings. Too often we dismiss it so quick, we shut it down, And it's like, we need to let them know that it's okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that when we look at it from a cultural point of view, yeah, we got to make it fun, but from a performance management point of view, I think it's really easy to put the responsibility on the team to have fun. Or you buy a piece of technology and you say, go have fun with that. It's a lot harder for us as managers when we don't hit a target right now. It is really tempting to push that pressure down, right? And go, hey, you know, why aren't we at our targets? Why aren't the numbers what they need to be this month? But I think starting with a little bit of empathy and understanding that there's so much change going on in the world right now, it's not just about how are we protecting ourselves and how are we protecting the team, but how are we teaching the team to protect itself from this stress and teach them stress management stuff like the circle of influence and circle of effect. If we are constantly letting stuff stress us out that we have no influence over, of course we're going to be stressed. But if we've done everything in our power, if you've set the clear expectations for the process, if they've walked the path and we're still not at the number, well, don't go home and beat yourself up. Separate that personal value from the professional.
I think on that note, Dan, too, like what, I'm lucky enough to have, a couple sons in the business with me that are in their 20s, right? And, what they've kind of tried to teach me is that not everybody responds to the same stuff, right? And then you also look at some of your managers who, in the auto industry, they started in sales and then they become a manager and then they in finance and they work their way up, but they don't really have a lot of training on managing people or HR and whatnot. And, they've, because I'm a bit old school, so I mean, obviously a lot of new age stuff and different types of profiles, but a simple thing you said, young people like, Dad, we got to start texting, a millennial at the end of the day and say, hey, you did a really good job with that customer today, and how far those little things go. So just to try and, maybe the females employees respond to a different thing. Maybe the older generation responds, and really strategizing how we're communicating with the staff has been big.
I think, and with communicating at scale is what I've kind of learned in the last few years, where all too often everyone gets painted with the same brush in the dealership. And like you were saying, October is done or November is done, and come December 1st, you're zero again and you have to start over, right? And, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that phrase. Well, okay, you did great, you hit your target in 1 month, but now you're starting, now you're at zero again. And I'm not sure how that is supposed to motivate a team. And this whole blanket type of communication that dealers and managers have been using for decades just kills productivity, because everyone needs to be dealt with at scale. Everybody's problem is different. Some handle stress better than others. I know in my dealership, when a lot of the teammates are not able to speak with a manager, they run to me. And they're running to me because they just need to talk to somebody, anybody that will listen, instead of being dismissed as insignificant, as it's not important, when in fact it's probably the most important thing right then.
Yeah, and I think everybody's used the word, and I think what's really important, particularly in the situation we're right now, is team. Yeah. Right? I mean, it's not top down anymore. You have to view it as a team. I had a philosophy when, throughout my career, I've had a philosophy of, I'm not going to ask anybody to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And I've always been willing to step in and help. And I think nowadays that's really, and John's a great indicator for how successful you can be when you do those types of things. And we see it in what his dealerships have been able to accomplish. And obviously it sounds like his staff are well looked after and understood. And I think if you bring everybody in as a team, if you make it about the team, not about individual performance, you can eliminate those rollover months where, how do we do? We did great. And guess what, guys? We're way ahead for the year so far. We're doing much better than we ever thought we were going to be. And the good news is, going into December, let's just have fun. We'll sell as many cars.
More of a momentum speech as opposed to a start over.
I do want to note, Ted, that we do screw up sometimes too.
No, I understand.
But the idea behind it is just you know, when you do screw up and you talk to your GM or sales manager, say, hey, we really screwed up, or even myself, sometimes I've screwed up the way I communicate, and just recognizing it and trying to react to it and recover, right? But
That's what I mean about the team. That's
And
exactly what I mean.
and I really think that's where excellence starts from, by the way, is that mentality of I screwed up instead of, oh, you know, the refs are the reason I'm in the penalty box, or my number's not my fault, kind of thing.
So with that said, gentlemen, should dealerships' training efforts change in 2020? Well, actually, it's not even if they should. We all know they should, but will they? And how is probably more appropriate should dealerships' training efforts change going forward in 2021? Well, we'll start with you.
I'm going to jump right in here and say that if dealerships haven't changed their training efforts by this time, as you're hearing this, we're already behind the 8 ball. Why? It goes back to that whole sell into life events, not selling cars. When you look at what people value nowadays, they value their time. They don't value their money. And so every dealership right now needs to be developing out that inside sales force, that digital sales force that maybe you've been resisting for the past couple years, because you got that, you know, the group of top sales reps that there's always the change management to go along with it. But if there's one thing that I can promise you, outside of the automotive industry, there's been 14 inside sales reps hired for every outside sales rep and retail sales rep every year. And this is going to be the year that starts to happen in the automotive industry. So that digital sales training, it's a must.
And what are other areas of training that you think are valid or needed in other than, you know, the sales aspect? What other areas do you think that dealers and dealerships should adapt training?
Well, if I'm getting more specific, when I say digital sales, I don't mean selling a car. I more mean selling an appointment. There's so many dealerships out there that struggle with selling a car, but don't struggle with closing an appointment when it gets to the showroom, right? So why are we trying to sell a car to someone who's a web lead? That would be like me trying to ask someone on a first date and then choice close them on a wedding.
Wait a second, I think you've done that, haven't you?
I tried it, but yeah, no, and realistically, the number one thing that you're going to hear from your sales team when you're talking about, you know, this is how you sell an appointment is, oh, but I can't get contact. Great, that sounds like the first thing we need to sell is contact. Mm-hmm. You know,
I think just on that one, Everold, is practice makes perfect, right? And I think, you know, what happened with a lot of stores, and our company was one of them, is because of the COVID demands and not being able to, you know, have meetings and, you know, the 6-foot rule and having gatherings. What happened is that kind of became a way out almost to stop training, right? And then recognizing, hey, our teams need it more now than ever, right? So we tried to get back to, you know, breaking it into smaller groups, breaking it into, you know, you have some training on product knowledge, because you have to keep on that. Practice makes perfect. You know, customers are so educated right now that if your staff isn't product knowledge, then you're going to be dead in the water, right? Especially with the competitive landscape with all the auto industry. And then the process obviously changed. You know what I mean? Like there's a different process now than there was a year ago, right? So, on how you communicate, and then the customer experience is so important, like Dan said, with some with some digital and with the communications, like even simple things like, you know, doing video now when you're communicating and that type of stuff. So that's all develops training, because not everybody's really comfortable getting in front of a, you know, I see some of the guys here, you know, they're doing videos and social media, but, you know, a salesman 3 years ago, you know, didn't really have to do that, right? Now the top salespeople know that they have to prospect on social media. They have to do Facebook. They have to do, you know, they have to use their own ways of communicating in the circle of influence and family and friends and whatnot. So, you know, we had to ramp it back up. We just had to find ways to start talking and start making sure that our best practices were happening again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the big one is training on the experience.
Yeah.
People are excited to go to a dealership. They actually want to. I mean, the stats show that look, we've all been stuck at home for a long time.
Well, especially
we get the
lately,
moment.
they've been excited to go to the
Yeah, I
dealership.
mean, we get the moment to go out. We get an opportunity to go out. We want to go out, but the expectation of the customer or the consumer has changed in a big way. I mean, we're not willing to accept mediocrity anymore. You know, it's like you go to a restaurant right now, you only have like 10 or 20 people or whatever it is, you know, and like the food comes out not so hot, right? Look, if the restaurant was totally full, you're kind of like, okay, they're super busy, we can move on. But now it's unacceptable. You know, it's like, what, this doesn't make any sense. So this level of expectation in the consumer, as far as what the experience is, because you know when they do go out, it's just gotten incredibly higher. I think when it comes to training and coaching, the biggest training efforts I would change moving forward is training a lot more on the experience, and also about how we measure the experience. Because I don't know a whole hell of a lot of dealerships out there that are measuring the experience at the dealership level. The manufacturer does with surveys that we all love so much. But
even reviews now, like,
Yeah.
I mean, people have more time, so they're sending more reviews, and then obviously listening to the reviews, because you know, if I'm going to go to a restaurant, I'm going to look at the reviews and see, okay, how are they with the COVID stuff? How
It's
are
an
they?
event.
Some people want masks, some people don't want masks, all that type of stuff, right? So you got to be really aware what you know, that your customers are having a good experience.
And that's where there's a big gap is, you know, I stepped into an opportunity a little over a year ago with a dealer group, and they weren't paying any attention to the Google reviews whatsoever. And whether it's Google, Maritz, JD Power, IHS Market, any of those, you know, soothsayers of what happens in the marketplace will tell you is third-party endorsements are what people are looking at. It's not good enough now to put an ad in the paper or on the radio or a billboard that says how great you are. Nobody cares about what you've put out. They want to care about what people who have come to visit you have to say. So when we talk about training, you know, my two big ones in line with everybody here would be communication and experience. And the communication piece is vital. You know, I happen now to be in an industry where there is direct communication with the consumer, and when you allow the salesperson, even in some cases the manager, to have that too much freedom to interact directly, I'm seeing marketing pieces where, you know, we go from the end of a sentence into the next sentence and they're conjoined. And there's spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes because we're not taking the care and making sure that the message is clear. And if the message isn't, I mean, maybe I'm unique, but I look at things like a dealership's website or any business's website, the way they communicate with me as an indication as to the way they operate their business. And
well, that's going to be your perception. That's going to be
that's my perception.
That's what you're expecting going into it, and the consumer's expectation has just gotten so much higher.
If you can't formulate a sentence on a simple question that I might have about a car,
You're done.
man, I don't know that I want to go to spend money at that location.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe it is just me, but I think there's a lot of consumers out there
I mean, a lot of
that are
consumers.
looking for levels of professionalism that go beyond. You know, I'm gonna bring it up tomorrow, but I'll say today, Gallup in the U.S. has done two polls, one in 2011, one in 2018, and it was salesperson trustworthiness. And in 2011, they had an 8% trustworthiness. Canada's not dissimilar. I looked at numbers for Canada as well. I think it was McLean's that did the study, and it was poor. One of the worst rated job professions was trust.
Second worst.
Second worst.
Behind only lawyer.
Yeah, I think it was in Canada.
I'm familiar.
So you know, not great ratings. And then we move ahead 9 years, and for me, or 8 years, and for me it's difficult because on the OEM side, I saw dealers, like everybody, really put a strong effort into building that customer experience. And Gallup poll in 2018, they weren't last, but they were still at 8% trustworthiness. And only politicians, and I can't imagine what happened in the U.S. between 16 and 20 that might, or 18 that might have changed that. But you know, it's sad because I think there are so many strong efforts that are being done by the OEM and by dealers to improve the impression with the consumer, but it was still an 8% trustworthiness.
Well,
It's disappointing.
and think about how correct the consumer would be to not trust us if we're trying to sell them a car. And they're right about that stigma of, oh, you'd say anything to me to get my money and put me into this vehicle rolling down the road, right? But if we start coming across as, I'm not here to sell you a car, I just wanted to help you. I noticed you took this action online. If you took that action, well, I'd imagine you're much like the last 3 of my customers that were doing that, they felt this way. They felt it really helpful when I did this. I don't know if you were expecting my call, but maybe you could come down and I could help you the same way. What do you think?
Just adding on the reviews and the customer experience, one of the things that back a couple of years ago, even my company and some of my employees, we didn't do a good job with was when we did get a bad survey or we did get a bad review, not knowing, like it isn't really, it's all about the recovery, right? So, having to actually teach a manager how to say you're sorry was a big thing. It's like the first thing that comes out of your mouth should be, I'm sorry, I screwed up. And this is how we can make it right, and listening. But, most times we don't recover quick enough. We weren't calling them back within, that they sent a review or they sent a message, and then the person that it should have went to didn't phone them immediately, immediately, like within an hour. And then because it just escalated, and by the time it got to me, and if it gets to me, they kind of failed, right? In fairness, being able to actually go through a whole concern resolution that, hey, the first thing out of your mouth is, I'm sorry, we screwed up. How can we make it right?
And Jason and I had this conversation about a month ago.
Yeah, we did.
And here's the irony of it. I said to him, I said, if you can train your management and your salespeople, sales managers, anything, it's to learn a phrase that starts with, if what you are telling me is correct, then you have every right to be upset.
Yeah.
Because you're not saying you are right. You're saying if what you're telling me is right, but allow me the opportunity to investigate and find out more about what happened. Let me hear your side of the story. You'll diffuse every angry customer you ever meet if you say that, because right away,
someone told me that.
What's their response going to be? It can't be, well, you're agreeing with me, so I'm still angry. I mean, it's never going to be that response. You're going to diffuse a situation, get them out of your showroom because you don't want your other potential customers or your existing customers to see any of it. Get them into an office, have them explain the story, do your investigation, and make sure you get back to them. That's the most important.
For sure.
So I'll ask you to summarize this because we've ran into the next question, which is pretty good. We've pretty much already answered it. But if I were to get just a quick tip from each of you, how the consumer has changed in 2020, what would you say, Dan?
If you can't go on your own website right now and go through everything that you would need to research in order to actually walk in, and you can't do that on your cell phone within about 90 to 120 seconds, just pay attention to that, would be all I would say. Because as a consumer, the demands have risen so much that as a dealer, you're not really competing with the dealership down the road anymore. Your online experience is competing with Amazon's online experience. And their ability to get that trade-in report or pull their credit rating and see if they'd get approved, they're comparing the ability to get that answer with how quick they pull up Netflix on their phone. So that is the customer's expectation nowadays, in my experience.
What do you say, Ted?
Yeah, I think the customer is. For me. There's two answers to this. One is I believe the customer has really become more educated than ever before.
Yeah.
Okay, they are coming armed with so much more information, which is a good thing, because if they've decided after they've gathered all that information to step into your store, they're likely to buy if you do a good job. It's yours to screw up if they've gotten to that point. But the second thing I think that we have to leverage, and I see dealers, really successful dealers doing this, they've become way more understanding because of the pandemic and because of the situation we're in. And if you talk to them in that manner, I hope you understand we'd like to be able to offer this. We just can't because, I sat in a chair from April through, second half of March through April on my own in one of our stores when I was with Plaza. And I sold 38 cars in that time frame. And for an old guy like me that hadn't sold cars, I'd been an executive in the auto industry for a number of years. It was fun. It was great. But the best part about it was the communication with the consumer. You articulate clearly, you explain the situation, and that honesty and integrity that has to be brought forth nowadays does allow you to reach to that understanding side of the consumer. And I think it builds a better relationship overall if you're truthful, and you can build off of that.
Yeah, Jason, what do you think quickly how consumers have changed?
Their demand for convenience has never been higher. It just really has, and it's not that it hasn't existed before. It has. It's just as an entire society, we're looking at anything we do, the way we order food or call in to get a pizza for my kids or get groceries from the store. We are just beelining for the company that's going to do it in the most convenient way for me as an individual. I think that's just been the biggest change.
I'm kind of going at the end here, so they want specialization, right? They want experts now when they're buying something. So they want, if they're going to buy a car off you, they expect you to, know it really well. And in service, they want to be talking to an advisor that's educated. And when they phone in at the receptionist, they want to. So everything's sort of, everything's had to be more accelerated on what the customer expectations are, being more aware of it. And then, Dan mentioned it, but, you have to embrace technology right now. And if you're not, and really embrace it, because, even the last 2 years, it's changed. So when I look back from 2 years ago to now, and the websites from a year ago, and all the different ways of communicating. So, you almost need your own department on technology just to stay on top of things, right? So, that's an avenue that we're going to have. We're going to have someone that's going to be ahead of the technology, just to make sure that little things like even going all digital with the manufacturers now. Every one of them. I have 3 Kia, Nissan, and Hyundai. They have what's called digital certification on the websites, where they give you a mandate of things that you have to have on your websites and how you can communicate, and their demands on what they expect. So technology is going to be a huge one this year.
So with that said, that technology is going to be massive for 2021. How can dealers like yourself help your sales reps communicate better with customers?
Well, you have to have a plan, first of all, right? So what you're trying to accomplish, what you're going to do, and there's going to be lots of innovation. There's lots. I could literally sit down in front of all these people and 20 other vendors all day long if I wanted to, and get pitched on different programs and software. And I'm not saying that by disrespectful. I'm just saying, there's so many things coming at you, but you're going to have to vet the right ones for your business, and then that are going to work best for the customers. And technology is going to, you even look at some of the new models coming out in the cars. Like, I'm driving a new Genesis, and I think I've driven new cars for a lot of years, but I don't even know how to change the radio station right now. I need to read the owner's manual. Like, things technology-wise are coming so quickly that there has to be just, you need to be training on this technology stuff.
What do you mean change the radio? Don't you just plug it into your iPad or your iPhone? And
no, I know, but even the
music?
way, you got
Don't you just
20
talk to the car now?
you got 20-inch touchless screens now that you have apps on, you can start your car. You got all these things now. You got links. You got all kinds of stuff, and then the vehicles are so advanced, and then all these apps and stuff for salespeople and advisors, and I expect that the sales process and the advisor process will be completely paperless within 2 to 3 years. So if you're not on that train, you're going to miss it.
Yeah. So Dan, what do you think? And this is one big pet peeve of mine too with dealerships. How do you think dealerships can strengthen their communication between departments?
Well, it doesn't have to be expensive. Like, it is technology, but it doesn't have to be expensive. You can go to formal solutions like Slack for team collaboration. You can just bring up your cell phone right now and start a group text message with your sales team or whatever the team is. So just making sure that, I think to John's point earlier, every different generation, every different personality type wants to be communicated with differently. And so using technology to do those things like in the moment updates, gratitude, rewards, recognition, stuff like that, it really does go a long way. But I think that the communication on the feelings is only part of it. The other part is using technology to communicate the process and the expectations. I can't tell you how many sales reps I talk to right now stressed out in dealerships. They know what the goal is, and they know what the starting point is, but they have no idea what step 2 is.
Right. So, Jason, you're a big culture guy.
I like my culture.
Well-
And you know what's funny though, because I'm not even that good at it. But yes, I do like it. Yes.
Well, we'll start with the orange shoes and tie. So, how do you define dealership culture? How?
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I'd love to say that it's something that I'm always trying to be better at, right? Like from the outside, maybe I'm looking like I'm doing a good job, but I still consider myself to be an amateur. Like I just feel like there's just so much more to learn, especially right now. There's seen so many dealerships that had an amazing culture, and that culture was built off of consistent communication strategies, and then of course, kind of the ability to have that FaceTime and that one-on-one kind of disappears. So then it's like, okay, how do you kind of rebuild that? But the way I kind of look at culture is, the collective team is working towards a singular direction. Meaning that if you're not around, they all know which way the ship is steering, right? So often we think of our dealerships as we set them up in managers in different levels, and then you got the owner, he's the captain of the ship, and he's the one who's steering it. And I tell you, out of the hundreds of dealerships that I've had the opportunity to go in and visit, it's not just the captain of the ship steering it, but it's the entire team truly understanding the direction of the business, and they can grab that steering wheel whenever they want and steer it just as well as the owner can. And it's an amazing thing. It's rare, but it's an amazing thing.
I think the key behind what you said is when you're not around.
Yes.
Right? Like
That's when culture really kicks in.
Strategy is us making good stuff happen when we intend for it to happen. Right? Whereas culture is making sure that the good stuff happens even when there's no intent. And that's what we're doing.
It's the atmosphere and attitude that you create within your organization. That's really what it comes down to when you talk about culture.
I mean, that's the space you have to live in. So the atmosphere has to be livable, right? So Dan, with all the cool stuff with technology, that we were talking about here, what excites you going forward in 2021 about technology in the auto space?
Gosh, honestly, I think that the most exciting thing for me is the culmination of all these technologies into one process that actually works. And what I mean by that is you're gonna see this is the year that auto dealerships go completely virtual and have inside sales teams. I think John had made a 100% correct prediction about within 2 to 3 years, that entire desking process, it is 100% going to be paperless. And so video offices, paperless desking, being able to adjust those payments right on the fly. And another really challenging part is the showroom died. So we need technology to bring the inside of what's happening in the showroom on the outside, showcasing the vehicle features, warranties, all our F&I profit centers, things like that. I'm really excited for it.
So John, from a dealership's perspective, from a dealer principal's perspective, how has your role changed? Or dealer principal's roles changed, you think?
Oh, quite a bit. I mean, obviously you have to be, like I said, when that happened, you had to be really dialed in. So, in the past, you have people in place, but, we really had to drill down on a lot of different KPIs, right? So, like I said, there's expense control, there was employment engagement, there was customer engagement, there was inventory, there was lots of things. So, we started off at the start in March doing GM calls on WhatsApp every day, and then now it's once a week, right? But I think it accelerated the car business on most dealers are way more advanced on technology. They're way better at communicating with their staff. They're way better at communicating with employees. So I think that's been a huge improvement for and I want to obviously continue that growth. But no, I'm excited about 2021. Like we have a parts chat group with every single employee in the parts departments, and you know what, I didn't realize, but the employees were actually they were wanting this. So like at the end of every day, this is how many parts we sold, this is how many tires we sold, and then they compete with the other dealerships. And the competitive nature came in, but they could also, hey, do you have this part? Or then in service, doing campaigns with advisors on tires and other things. And then you had a salesman chat group, and then I could do a I could do, I got the little gizmo with the video, trying to lead by example with doing videos and being able to do some training, even if it's only 1 or 2 minutes, and saying, hey, let's not forget about the customer experience and wowing them and making sure we're happy when they walk in here and stuff like that, and then hit all your staff, where before you'd bring them into a meeting. So it was, and they liked it, they wanted it. Hey, can you do more of those? So what I found is that, even we have a 72-year-old advisor, he's on the What's Chat group asking like, hey, when's your next video, right? And then the 25-year-olds are eating it up, right? So they loved the communication.
Big deal. So last question for the panel, and I'll throw it out there to each of you to give me a quick answer, because I know you got lots to say on this subject, but what should dealerships do, or how should their marketing strategies change for 2021? With everything that we've learned in 2020, going forward for 2021.
All right, for the first time, I'm going to give the shortest answer on this panel, which is you got enough traffic. Focus on how you're converting the traffic into contactable leads. Put the tech in place so you can sell from home.
I'm gonna be a little bit longer, but not much longer. I've seen.
Dan was doing his mic drop, by the way.
Yeah, sorry
Sorry
about that. I think with marketing efforts, again, it's making sure that you reach out the right way to the consumer. And I've been a big proponent of cause marketing for years and years. And I think giving back to the community and doing the right things within your market garners you so much more traction in the marketplace. And I don't see a lot of dealers taking advantage of that in the right way. It's not about, look at me, I gave a $5,000 check. It's having an event, getting the radio station to do a remote. It's getting the newspaper to be there and not put an ad in the paper, but tell the story of what you've done to support the community. I think people are worn out. I think consumers have had a very tough year. People have lost their jobs, or unemployment's never been as high as it is right now, and some of those jobs may never come back. And so, things that you can do within the community to show that you do care and that you are community driven are really going to help dealers in 2021, and that's one area where I think they should explore opportunities.
Well, Jason, the marketing guy, what are your thoughts?
My operations manager is going to hate me for saying this. I don't think we need to be spending, a whole hell of a lot in PPC or SEM, whatever you want to call it. I think dealers really need to focus on their brand and how that brand translates out in the form of value to the customer.
Which ties into what I said about cause marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Just not the radio station.
The remote would be on the lot. It's part of the promotion.
But no, it is. It's not necessarily. It's not the price of the car, that's going to continue to bring them back. And sometimes it's not even the car that's going to bring them back. It's what is the value of maintaining my vehicle, at this dealership. What's the value of me coming back to get the car, because my kid's now driving again. Like, what is that value to me? It's not necessary. It goes deeper than a why buy. It's because a why buy is something that can exist right there at that given moment. This is brand. This is something that's got value, and over the course of a long period of time that drives me back to the dealership a time and time again.
What do you think, John?
All the gentlemen on the panel said some good ones. We wanted to have sort of a brand that we're a family-owned business in the community, and so Ted touched on that. And obviously there's not one little thing that you can do, because whether if someone's looking for a vehicle or looking for tires, our goal was always to be maybe one of the top 3 that they thought of. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we know we got to do some community stuff. We know we got to, maybe we're going to be a little bit on TV, maybe we're going to be a little bit on the social media, and making sure that we have good technology. And then the other one is just the AI stuff, knowing like so many dealers don't know how to look at data and actually do something with it, right? So that's something that I don't think I've been very good at, is actually, I have lots of data, but knowing the behaviors of my customer base and knowing how to go about targeting them and giving them, and doing that stuff. So I said, embracing the technology and knowing what you can do with you know, the DMSs and all the stuff we already have, and actually maximizing those is probably going to be a big one for dealers, because they already have a lot of the data. Like, this person comes in your service department 3 or 4 times a year. This person buys a car every 2 years, but do you actually know how the data works and how to, you know, go about it? So that would be a big one for us.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your.
I'm going to say one more thing,
One more
and
thing.
not about marketing specifically. It's one of those things that is torquing me a little bit
Have
right
to
now
get it
with
out.
the industry, and I have to get it out.
You gotta get it.
I got to get it out because we've talked a lot about the dealerships, the operation, what to expect in 2021, and the answers have been fantastic. And I think there's a lot of guidance here for anybody that will be watching this. The one thing that I've had some really good conversations with a number of dealers, and they're all excited because they managed to make it. In their opinion, they've made it through the most difficult period, which was that, you know, March through May time slot, and they've come out and sales have come back, and they're pretty happy with their years, and they're excited about the bottom line and what they've done. And my question to them has always been, what are you going to do in 2021? What do you mean? CEWS, government support's not going to be there. A lot of the bottom line, a lot of the results have been driven by credits and benefits that aren't going to be there. And my only thing would be to make sure that you do take that out of the financial statement. Look at how your year has been with reduced staff and the functionality that you've had with the dealership before you start to plan, or at least as you're planning 2021. Don't count that as something that's going to be part of you know, your bottom line or your income for 2021. And John, I don't know how you accounted for it, but a lot of the guys that I have spoken to, they're forgetting about that benefit, and they're looking and saying, it's robust, I should sell, I could get 4 times, 5 times multiples, and they're not true numbers when you take that amount in. I mean, I just did an assessment for a dealer the other day, and he had $162,000, you know, and thought, look, my bottom line's like 560. We'll say it was 400 because it's not going to be there next year, right? And I just, you know, when we're talking about so many important topics, it's just one thing that I think dealers need to remember, that there are some things that have happened this year that have reduced expenses, which I think has been good in some ways because I think it's cleaned up a lot of excess that dealers had that they didn't need. And they've proven to themselves that they can sell cars virtually, right, remotely. They can do that. But then there were some credits that came in that have to be really considered before you look at 2021 and do your planning and strategizing.
Well, awesome. I'll just close off this section with my overall thought. You know, we touched on a lot. Conveniences that we can provide in the dealerships, customer service, the customer experience, teams, sales teams, you know, increasing their product knowledge, technology, marketing. Like there's a whole bunch here that we've covered, and it's been really great. The one thing I'll throw in there is to summarize it all up is to have the right mindset going in for 2021. It's great to have processes and technology, but I think it's also important to, especially in the times that we're in, to have the right mindset, and that comes with training, with listening, and really realizing what makes each individual tick within our dealership. So knowing and I think John's on the right track with getting feedback from your individual staff, because that individual feedback will literally let you realize that salesperson A versus salesperson B can do much better, but what pushes their buttons are 2 totally different things. And dealerships have always painted people with this big paintbrush, and you see numbers and you see targets, and that's all you're focused on is percentages and targets. But if you empower people and bring out the best in people by identifying what really makes individuals tick, that collectively transforms organizations to unparalleled results, in my opinion.
Great. Can I ask Dan one question before we get out?
Absolutely.
Dan, can you give us one little gold nugget on what the best dealers are doing for converting the leads?
Happily. I almost did when you said it there, Everold. He said we talked about product knowledge, prospect knowledge. prospect knowledge. Every little piece of information on that lead is something that you will use to sell contact. I cannot stress enough. If you look at a lead and you look at that lead and say, oh, it's a bad lead, he's not interested in buying a car. Well, where did the lead come from? Did it come from your inventory and they sorted by the price ascending? So, well, right there, you know about the prospect that they are looking for a used car. They're probably price sensitive. Did they put a fake phone number in the field? Send them an email with a subject that says, I hate sales calls too, but I'd love to buy your car. I guarantee he's going to read it. Why? Because you knew that that person was trying to hide from the salesperson. Prospect knowledge. Prospect knowledge beats product knowledge.